Greetings and salutations, everyone. My name is Tyjae Spears and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today, I'm going to be talking about my Week 9 waiver wire targets for the 2023 fantasy football season. As we approach Week 9, we have the return of bye weeks. The Jacksonville Jaguars, Detroit Lions, the Denver Broncos, and the San Francisco 49ers will all be on bye. But besides that, there were a plethora of injuries that took place in Week 8. Guys like Kirk Cousins, Matthew Stafford, Darren Waller, Drake London, Kendrick Bourne. A lot of significant players sustained injuries, and that's not only going to impact us for this upcoming week, but for the remainder of the season. Therefore, we're going to try to find players at all overall positions, running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, quarterbacks, kickers, and defenses that can not only help us capture a victory in Week 9, but also have sustained value and be starting options for the remainder of the 2023 season so we can capture a 2023 fantasy football championship. Because that's the entire point of fantasy football. We're trying to string together as many victories as possible in order to get to the playoffs and capture a 2023 fantasy football championship. So if you've yet to do so already, be sure to subscribe to the channel because we're making daily fantasy football content for the entirety of the 2023 season in order to help you guys capture said championships. Also, for those of you who want additional content and an additional advantage via my rankings every single Sunday morning, travel down to the description of the video and check out Underdog Fantasy. At the end of today's episode, I'll be putting together a couple pick'em slips via Underdog Fantasy for tonight's game between the Detroit Lions and, of course, Las Vegas Raiders. But if you sign up today using code Andrew and make a first-time deposit minimum of $10, not only are you going to get the first-time deposit match up to $500, you're going to get my ranking sent to you from my email directly to yours every single Sunday morning for the entirety of the 2023 season. These rankings consist of by position, by tier, flex rankings, half PPR, full PPR, all-encompassing rankings so that regardless of what you're doing on Sundays, you have an advantage upon your league mates. For those of you who are wondering if you're eligible to draft, play the Pick'ems game, and of course, take advantage of these rankings via Underdog Fantasy, check out the map to the right side of the screen to determine your eligibility. On top of it, later tonight, like I was mentioning, putting together a couple Pick'em slips. If you sign up today, you can take advantage of Jared Goff's new customer special of 0.5 total yards in order to start off your underdog journey the right way. Thank you very much for all the support. Let's get into talking about some waiver wire targets. All right, let's talk about the wide receiver position first and foremost, because I do believe there is a lot of value, especially when it comes to rookie wide receivers who are beginning to catch their stride. I wanted to mention Quentin Johnston, the rookie wide receiver, first round pick of the Los Angeles Chargers, primarily because he currently is only rostered in 19% of Yahoo leagues and 36% of sleeper leagues. I think these are relatively low numbers, and if in fact we're in a position where in your league he is still potentially available, you should be picking him up. Last night against the Chicago Bears was the first time that Quentin Johnston played the second most snaps amongst all wide receivers on the team. He was only second to Keenan Allen, and it wasn't because Joshua Palmer played a significantly less amount of snaps. It was just a matter of this offense utilizing a lot of 11 personnel, 3 wide receivers, 1 tight end, and 1 running back. So going forward, if we're going to continue to see Quentin Johnston be the number 2 wide receiver option in terms of snaps, in terms of targets, going forward, his value is going to continue to grow considering he is a part of one of the better offensive attacks and associated with such a great quarterback in Justin Herbert. Last night, 6 targets, 5 overall receptions, and 50 receiving yards. Now, you may be thinking that 5 receptions total isn't a lot, but in the case of Quentin Johnston, it is, especially considering 5 total receptions was just as many as he had between weeks 2 through 7 of this season already. So just putting it into perspective, we're seeing far more utilization in terms of snaps, targets, opportunities, receptions, overall workload for Quentin Johnston. And hopefully, as the weeks progress, he's going to be as valuable to the Chargers offense as the other guys he was drafted around have been to their offenses, guys like Zay Jones and Jordan Addison, who he was drafted right next to in the first round of the 2023 NFL draft. And hopefully, he can take over the role of Mike Williams, which again has made a huge gap within this offense. Hopefully, Quentin Johnston is up for the task on hand. Let's move on to the next player, another one of these rookie young wide receivers. We have Demario Douglas of the New England Patriots. Obviously, the New England Patriots offense hasn't really had a lot of talent at the wide receiver position over the last couple years. Kendrick Bourne, yesterday, unfortunately, season-ending injury. Devontae Parker sustained a concussion. He'll probably miss this upcoming week. This is only opening up more opportunities for Demario Douglas. And honestly, he didn't need those overall injuries in order to give him more opportunities because he was carving it out himself, considering he had overtaken Juju Smith-Schuster within this lineup already. I mean, yesterday, he led the team in terms of overall wide receiver snaps played. The last 2 weeks, he's had 13 targets, 9 receptions, and as long as he continues to be a main part of this offense and the primary slot receiver, going forward, Mac Jones is going to continue to look in his direction. You go back to last year, talk about Jacoby Myers, his overall integration within this offense. Mac Jones continued to look in his direction as the primary slot receiver, and without the overall opportunity opportunities of throwing the ball to a Kendrick Bourne going forward. Demario Douglas, who is currently only rostered in 3% of Yahoo leagues and 6% of sleeper leagues, has an opportunity to take over the wide receiver role of this offense for the remainder of the season. Now, even though the New England Patriots offense as a passing threat isn't as valuable as having someone like Quentin Johnston who's associated with the Chargers, I still believe there is a lot of value to be had. If you play in a full PPR, half PPR scoring format, he's going to have enough value via receptions and receiving yards to be a solid wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 option in majority of the games going forward. That's why I believe Demario Douglas, absolutely a waiver wire pickup going forward. Our number 3 is Jonathan Mingo, another rookie wide receiver. A guy that earlier this season, again, has struggled, but has consistently played a high volume of snaps and has had himself a high volume of overall targets. Now, in the last 2 games for the Carolina Panthers, we have seen that Jonathan Mingo has led all wide receivers on the team in terms of total offensive snaps. As long as he continues to maintain himself on the field and playing alongside of Adam Thielen and this entire offense, he's going to get himself a higher volume of targets as we progress. We're going to see more of a comfortability from Bryce Young. And as I continue to throw the ball at a high rate, considering they're going to be in a lot of negative game scripts, Jonathan Mingo will have value. He's currently only rostered in 6% of Yahoo leagues, 17% of sleeper leagues. And we're in a position where if in fact the Carolina Panthers don't make a trade prior to tomorrow's trade deadline for a wide receiver, which we've heard a lot of rumors that they potentially could, if they don't do so, Jonathan Mingo, playing on the outside majority of the time, also sees himself a couple stints within the slot position, will be of value going forward for fantasy purposes, especially considering Thomas Brown, the offensive coordinator of this team, most recently took over play calling duties. He is from the Sean McVay tree. They love to use 11 personnel, 3 wide receiver sets, and as long as Jonathan Mingo is going to be on the field, he will be of value for fantasy purposes. Moving on to our number 4, another rookie wide receiver, Jayden Reed. We mentioned him last week, and besides the fact that he is seeing himself score a consistent volume of fantasy points, the fact of the matter is the Green Bay Packers offense is awful in the first half. In the first half of games, they are the lowest scoring team in the National Football League, only averaging 4.1 points per game in the first half, while in the second half, they're the highest scoring NFL team as they're averaging 15.9 points per game. So if we're going to be in a scenario for the remainder of the season, if the Green Bay Packers don't clean up their act, and Jordan Love will be throwing for majority of games in the second half, and guys like Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs aren't going to step up to the task at hand, Jayden Reed, who's currently only rostered in 17% of Yahoo leagues and 26% of sleeper leagues, could be a value going forward, primarily because of the negative game scripts that they have going forward. As long as he continues to see targets, it's really hard to argue with his potential value going forward. Moving on to our number 5, another rookie wide receiver, Michael Wilson. Again, we're really just talking about rookie wide receivers because we have gotten to a point thus far this season, 8 weeks in, that these guys have really found their footing, really found comfortability within this offense, and have really outplayed their peers within practices and games, and going forward are going to be a value for fantasy purposes. Now, the reason why I trust Michael Wilson, who is currently only rostered in 15% of Yahoo leagues, 23% of sleeper leagues, is the fact that eventually Kyler Murray will return, and Kyler Murray's presence is going to elevate the receiving game of this offense, not only to guys like Marquise Hollywood Brown, Trey McBride, but again, Michael Wilson, who as of the last 4 weeks of the season has been the number 2 wide receiver within this offense in terms of total snaps played. As long as he continues to maintain that role, he will have value in the return of Kyler Murray. If you guys remember last season, Kyler Murray was able to get guys like Greg Dortch to be fantasy relevant on a consistent basis. So why not a guy like Michael Wilson? The final wide receiver I wanted to mention is Khalil Shakir. Even though he isn't a rookie, he's a second-year player. He's associated with a Bills offense, which of course is high-powered. He's coming off of a week in which he had 6 targets, 6 receptions, and 92 receiving yards amongst all the games that the Buffalo Bills have played this season. When they took on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in Week 8, in the absence of Dawson Knox, we saw the most 11 personnel this team has ran thus far this season. Because again, if you don't have 2 tight ends, you can't run that 12 personnel. You run 11 personnel, 1 running back, 1 tight end, 3 wide receivers. And if we're going to see 3 wide receivers on the field consistently, this is an offense that has been desperately searching for their slot receiving option. So whether that's going to be a guy like Dalton Kincaid or Khalil Shakir, who obviously stepped up with 6 catches, 92 yards against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Going forward, in the absence of Dawson Knox, we could see more value from Khalil Shakir, an offense that since they moved on from Cole Beasley a couple years ago have desperately been looking for his replacement at the slot receiving role. All right, let's move on and let's talk about some tight ends and quarterbacks, because again, they're going to be a value because of all the injuries that were sustained in Week 8. We're going to begin with a tight end conversation, and our thumbnail of today's episode, on number 1 of the tight end position, Trey McBride, currently only rostered in 20% of Yahoo leagues, 28% of sleeper leagues. This was a guy that I had ranked within my top 16 tight end rankings this week, and for good reason. In the absence of Zach Ertz, we knew that this offense was going to continue to throw the ball to the tight end position. They've done that all season long, and they did not stop and they did not disappoint against the Baltimore Ravens, despite it being a very difficult matchup. But let's go ahead and give you a little bit of an understanding. Trey McBride played 82% of the offensive snaps. Great overall percentage. On top of it, from quarters 1 through 3 against the Baltimore Ravens, 7 targets, 4 receptions, 21 receiving yards, in which we thought, okay, that's a pretty solid game. Good opportunity. Unfortunately, the yardage wasn't there after the catch. We'll live with that, though. Overall opportunity was good. But in the fourth quarter, against the Baltimore Ravens, we had a roaring, kind of epic comeback of sorts. Even though they weren't able to get the game close, we saw a completely different offensive approach from Joshua Dobbs as he continued to funnel target Trey McBride in the fourth quarter. Trey McBride in the fourth quarter alone, 7 targets, 6 catches, 74 receiving yards, and a receiving touchdown. He finished week 8 against the Baltimore Ravens, one of the most difficult matchups of the position, with 14 targets, 10 catches, 95 yards, and a touchdown. 14 targets amongst all tight ends this season is the most a singular tight end has had. Trey McBride leads the NFL thus far this season with the highest targeted game amongst the tight end position. You would think that wouldn't be the case with guys like TJ Hawkinson and Travis Kelce out there, but nonetheless, Trey McBride, going forward, in the absence of Zach Ertz, is going to continue to maintain this role as the primary receiving threat at the tight end position. And again, there's a lot of opportunity going in his direction, considering the offense he is associated with. The number 2 at the tight end position is Taysom Hill. I did not anticipate that Taysom Hill would run the ball as much as he did, and I honestly didn't anticipate that he'd play as much. In the return of Juwan Johnson, the expectation was that Juwan Johnson would go back to being the receiving role and that Taysom Hill would be phased out, and that's exactly what happened. Unfortunately, Taysom Hill didn't run as many routes. He didn't have as much receiving work as he had in week 6 and 7, but nonetheless, in week 8, Taysom Hill played himself a lot of overall snaps. He played 11 snaps at quarterback, 1 in the backfield, 5 in the inline, 10 in the slot, and 2 out wide. And with those overall opportunities, was able to get himself multiple rushing touchdowns and an overall fantastic performance. Now, when we go ahead and talk about who the handcuff is to Alvin Kamara, really we would think, it's Jamal Williams, Kendre Miller, but the way that this offense kind of functions as a whole, Jamal Williams only played 23% of the snaps yesterday. Kendre Miller only played 14% of the snaps, while we had, Taysom Hill absolutely dominating in terms of the snap count. In the last 5 games, he's played 51, 43, 72, 58 and 44% of the offensive snaps. As long as he continues to run the ball as much as he has and is going to continue to be that goal line threat, we have 2022 Taysom Hill back into the conversation and getting ourselves a lot of potential fantasy points based on his overall rushing ability. Moving on to the number 3 option, we have Michael Mayer. He plays later tonight. If you have an opportunity of picking him up before tonight's game, just in case he has himself a breakout performance, you will have already picked him up before tonight's game. You can drop someone on your bench who didn't perform well or potentially is out for the remainder of the season and go ahead and get yourself into a position where you pick up Michael Mayer, have him on roster before tonight's game, and if he pops off, you have yourself a valuable tight end option going forward. We know that the Las Vegas Raiders offense wants to utilize the tight end. We have seen him overtake Austin Hooper in the last couple weeks, and he certainly will be of value. Currently only rostered in 19% of Yahoo leagues, 25% of sleeper leagues. Let's talk about a couple quarterbacks, beginning with the 3 that we have on screen: Sam Howell, Derek Carr, and Baker Mayfield. I just wanted to go ahead and mention, if these 3 options are potentially available, again, in the absence of Trevor Lawrence, Brock Purdy, Jared Goff this upcoming week, potentially these could be of service. But for those of you who are going to be missing the services of Matthew Stafford and or Kirk Cousins for the remainder of the season, again, Sam Howell currently rostered in 45% of Yahoo and sleeper leagues. Derek Carr rostered in 36+% of Yahoo and sleeper leagues. And of course, Baker Mayfield rostered in 30+% of both of those leagues. If those 3 are available, going forward, they're potentially the best quarterback options. But if in fact they're not available, they are on rosters, they are somebody else's backup or potential starter, the other options I wanted to mention are Gardner Minshew, Mac Jones, and Will Levis. Gardner Minshew has played extremely well. We know he's going to be the starting quarterback of this team for the remainder of the season, obviously because of the injury to Anthony Richardson's shoulder. Season-ending injury, had the surgery already done. Gardner Minshew has played extremely well, even against tough matchups. Mac Jones is progressively playing better, has an advantageous matchup this upcoming week against the Washington Commanders. But again, without a lot of his receiving options available, may not be as sustainable this upcoming week. But going forward, with those guys coming back like Devontae Parker, it could end up being of value. The final player I wanted to mention is Will Levis. I talked about it on Wednesday's wide receiver episode when we talked about DeAndre Hopkins. I said specifically, I don't know if Will Levis is the next coming or if he's just going to be an average, below average quarterback. We'll just have to wait and see. And we saw what we saw. Will Levis, man, 4 passing touchdowns was not in my bingo card. That was not one of the things that I expected to see in week 8, but nonetheless, we'll take it. He's going to be the starting quarterback going into Thursday's game against the Pittsburgh Steelers. On the opposite side, it'll be Mitchell Trubisky. There is a high likelihood that Will Levis could find success within the given week and going forward for the remainder of the season, so keep that in mind. Now, let's go ahead and let's transition into the running back conversation. We have 5 running backs on screen, beginning with Zach Charbonnet. He's already rostered in 42% of Yahoo leagues, 49% of sleeper leagues. Somehow, some way, if he's still available as a handcuff option, please pick him up, especially if you have Kenneth Walker, primarily because Zach Charbonnet out-snapped Kenneth Walker 59% to 41%, and he had 7 total touches in comparison to Kenneth Walker's total 9 touches. So if we're going to be in a position with Zach Charbonnet, slowly but surely as a rookie, takes over more of this backfield share, that could absolutely damage Kenneth Walker and potentially give Zach Charbonnet, RB3, RB2 upside within the position, especially if he has some breakout runs and potentially scores a touchdown. Tyjae Spears, our number 2. If in fact the Derrick Henry kind of rumblings come to fruition, which I doubt it does, but if in fact it does and Derrick Henry gets traded prior to tomorrow's trade deadline, Tyjae Spears would be the RB1 of this team going forward and absolutely would be of value. He's currently already rostered in 57% of sleeper leagues, 49% of Yahoo leagues, but just wanted to go ahead and mention him once again. We have Royce Freeman as our number 3. We already are all rostering a guy like Darrell Henderson. Darrell Henderson put up 10 fantasy points, but so did Royce Freeman. Royce Freeman, despite the fact that he didn't have as much opportunity, was given an opportunity on the goal line, and that's really all that matters. Darrell Henderson ran this offense to the 1-yard line, literally. Fell down, was tackled at the 1-yard line. The following play, Royce Freeman comes in, scores a rushing touchdown. In the absence of Matthew Stafford, we may see more rushing opportunities from this backfield, especially when we take into account last season, in the absence of Matthew Stafford, Cam Akers had a lot of rushing opportunity, and when he was given said opportunities, even in the absence of Matthew Stafford, the running game of the Los Angeles Rams stayed consistent, so Royce Freeman could be a value going forward, again, until the return of Kyren Williams. Emari Demercado, again, until we see the return of James Conner, will be a value as the primary RB1, had 20 rushing attempts, and on top of it, Damian Williams, the other running back within this backfield, who gets consistent touches behind Emari Demercado, left the game and did not return. Obviously, the other running back that kind of got into the mix was Keontae Ingram. We know that they don't want to give Keontae Ingram the ball, so even against the Cleveland Browns this upcoming week, Emari Demercado will have enough opportunity in terms of touches to absolutely make him an RB3 option. The final player I wanted to mention is Devin Singletary. Again, Dameon Pierce was disappointing. He had a touchdown stolen from him by a fullback. He had another touchdown that was called back for a touchdown, and he had another opportunity in which he was stuffed on. This backfield is a mess. I wouldn't be surprised if they moved on to Devin Singletary. Time will tell. Our number 6 option is just a question mark. That's primarily just like a, hey, if you need to go ahead and pick up your handcuff, because again, a lot of these players that we mentioned, literally all of them are backups. Pick up your handcuff to your most valuable running back. So whether that's Ezekiel Elliott that is associated with Ramondre, a guy like Leonard Fournette or Latavius Murray that is associated with James Cook, potentially a guy like Joshua Kelly associated with Austin Eckler, Rico Dowdle to Tony Pollard. Pick up your handcuffs and make sure that you don't go ahead and put yourself in a dangerous position in case of an injury taking place. All right, let's move on and let's close out today's video talking about kickers and defenses. Beginning with our 1, 2, 3 kickers, we have Matt Gay. Matt Gay, again, in the last 4 weeks, has averaged 10 fantasy points per game. Overall, fantastic kicker. This offense continues to score every single week. Kaimi Fairbairn is coming off the worst performance of his season. But if, in fact, somebody drops him in your league, be sure to go ahead and pick him up because he has been a consistent fantasy option. And I doubt that the Houston Texans will be putting together as terrible as a performance as they did on Sunday in continuous weeks. Blake Rupe, another one of these options. Amongst all kickers in the last 4 weeks in terms of fantasy points per game at the kicker position, he is number 5 overall. He continues to see himself a lot of opportunity and continues to score a high volume of fantasy points going forward. Let's talk about potential defensive plays. Going into this week, first and foremost, the Atlanta Falcons take on the Minnesota Vikings without Kirk Cousins. Jaron Hall is the suspected starting quarterback of that team. The Atlanta Falcons should be of value. Moving on, let's talk about the Green Bay Packers. If, in fact, the Los Angeles Rams do not have the services of Matthew Stafford and Brett Rippon is going to be the starting quarterback, the Green Bay Packers defense will be of value. Moving on, the Tennessee Titans. Again, Kenny Pickett's going to be out. Mitchell Trubisky will be the starting quarterback on Thursday. Short week. The Tennessee Titans defense can absolutely make it a living nightmare for Mitchell Trubisky on Thursday and have themselves a great overall performance. Again, starting all defenses against newly starting backup quarterbacks. That is the hope and the plan for this upcoming week. All right, with this all covered, I want to thank you all for watching. Be sure to go ahead, subscribe, click the like button down below if you have not yet already. We're going to close out today's video by putting together a couple pick'em slips via Underdog Fantasy and closing it out. Thank you very much. So going into tonight, I had already gone ahead and put the Michael Mayer play 100K sweepstakes in, Again, if it's available to you, 21.5 total yards. Put in the Michael Myers, you get it for the Halloween theme play. I already put it in with Adam Thielen, but you could potentially add it with another one of these players. One of the other plays that I like going into tonight, Devontae Adams getting higher than 6 overall receptions. In the last couple games with Jimmy Garoppolo, he has not seen himself a lot of utilization. So my expectation is that he will have already talked to Jimmy Garoppolo, been like, hey, we got to get me the ball. And I think they're going to make that a point of emphasis, especially considering it'll be difficult to run the ball. I also have Jahmyr Gibbs going higher than 72.5 rushing yards. This is the team that wants to run the ball. And when, in fact, they're giving an opportunity to do so against a team that cannot stop the run, like the Las Vegas Raiders, they'll be doing it for a majority of the night. And potentially, Jahmyr Gibbs will demonstrate once again why he is one of the more talented backs and why they utilize the 12th overall selection on him in the 2023 NFL Draft and why they're potentially should be using him more often, even in the return of David Montgomery. Nonetheless, that'll cover for me today. Those are the 2 picks in terms of pick'ems that I'm putting together going into tonight's game via Underdog Fantasy. Again, use code Andrew. Make that first-time deposit not only to get my weekly rankings, the first-time deposit match, but also the 0.5 total yard play of Jared Goff for tonight's game. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Until tomorrow, we'll be talking about the running back position. I'll see you guys. Peace.